carnosine is a phenomenal patch that has been proven in human clinical studies to improve cardiac function. And there isn't a single medication currently available that has anywhere near the impact that carnosine has on the heart from a functionality pumping perspective. The cardiac ejection fraction volume has increased by 8% in human clinical studies. And so I'm using that data and transposing it to animals who have mitral valve disease or heart conditions and helping them with their heart. So another excellent use for carnosine is wounds and the nervous system and eyes. So if there is a head injury or a spinal issue, carnosine is fantastic for regenerating nerves. And it's also known to decrease certain cancer growth. And so the case that I'm going to talk about today is Nala. She's a 15-year-old lab who came uh, to me for end of life concerns on May 31st. The owners were distraught that she couldn't get up. She was urinating and defecating on herself. She was in a lot of pain, but she had this life force energy. And so I always look at that life force energy as a tool to help decide, is there room to continue, or is this really suffering and a poor quality of life? And when I looked at her, I got the feeling that she wasn't ready to go. And I told the owners we need to do everything for her. And so I combine the patches with laser, a lot of times cold laser, and you'll see in this video that Linda's going to show what Nala was like right after starting to wear the patches and after her first laser session. So she had a 10 centimeter bony growth on the inside of her left knee. And I told the owners, like, it's highly unlikely that we're going to be able to do anything with this growth, but we can help diminish her pain. So you can see she's dragging that left back leg there, and she's got this wide bow-legged stance because her knee is malformed. So she wore carnosine right on the bony growth and X39 and Eon on her spine. So Eon's for inflammation, X39 is stem cell repair. And so this video on the right was her on Friday. First of all, I was shocked that she was still with us. And second, I was even more shocked that her bony growth has shrunken by 50% in size. I've never seen this in 15 years of emergency practice. And she's doing great. She's eating like a champ, and so we're going to increase her calories. And so she's still wearing all three patches. Her carne.
So PD is also 15 years old. He started wearing the patches when I started wearing them because Juliana gave me the hint that I could even share my patch after I took it off and put it on him. So I would wear X39, X49, and then I'd take it off and put it on the top of his head for 12 hours. After a couple of months, I actually noticed that PD was improving more than I was. I was very impressed with a change in his energy level and in his overall just vitality. So PD has one very particular issue, which is he was strangulated in an animal trap in 2022, which caused what people would call a laryngeal paralysis, but it's not from aging, it was from damage to the larynx. And in the last 2 years, as he has had that sort of deteriorate the movement of the larynx. His other little problem, which is allergies, he would get too much phlegm and we'd start to see choking, snorkeling. He was gagging on his food. It was just suddenly my little sweetheart, who had a lot of vitality still at 13 at that time, really started to age. So I decided he now would get his own X39 and his own 49 every day. But what I also discovered was that at night, if I put the YH trio across the top of his head, I would use the carnosine, the glutathione, and the Eon every night. It was within 2 weeks where there was no more snorkeling, no more gagging, no more snoring through the night. The movement of his kind of postnasal drip with his allergies, and the phlegm in his throat would completely stop. And so I ended up having great success with that. There, oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you. There is my PD. I have a 10-year-old nephew in New York waiting for us, and we have a transmission problem with the van. That's why I'm on the call tonight. And so that's PD and his friends who posed for the picture to reassure my 10-year-old nephew that we are working on the van and we will be there soon. So again, I find that the patches are very powerful for me, but I also find that they are more effective in the sense of I can see the results very quickly with PD. The other thing that PD did, and I thought that was amazing that you mentioned it earlier, one of your participants, our doctor there, that the ripping off of the toe. So PD's still very active at 15, and he had completely tore his toenail where only the quick was showing and an infection was starting right up under the cuticle. It took about 2 months for the whole thing to resolve. But what I started to do was use salves and take care of wrapping the actual toenail. But then I put on a little boy's sock. And on top of the sock, he got the YH trio again, the carnosine, the glutathione, and the Eon. And it was amazing how quickly the infection disappeared, and now there is absolutely no sign that he tore that entire nail off. I think that's pretty much the highlights, is to say, what I'm just so surprised he is. I think I mentioned to you, Juliana, that as of January, PD now has his own patches. So he gets fresh patches every day. But what I've noticed more specifically would be to say prior to the patches, PD was aging. He was clearly losing sight. He has cataracts. He had difficulty hearing. He was starting to walk out and do that old man kind of where am I walk. Lost his kind of interest in his environment. Now that he's been wearing the patches for 6 months, I don't see any sign of aging. He is still a 15-year-old dog. He still doesn't run for as long as he used to. He doesn't play with rabbit toy as long as he used to, but he's not aging. He shows no indication of eyesight trouble anymore. His hearing, he's good with a high whistle. I just don't notice, and he definitely does not wander around like an old man who doesn't know where he's going anymore. He is very much on purpose. He is the game warden of the National Forest where we live, and yeah, that's the biggest thing. He has stopped aging. He's an older dog, but he is not deteriorating before my eyes, which is what I was seeing happening last year.
I'm Ron Rabin, Elite Senior Presidential Director with LifeWave. I have a tremendous testimony myself, but we're not going to get into that tonight. We're going to talk real quickly on Faith so we can move along. I have 5 German Shepherds. Faith is the daughter of Lakota, who is 10, and Samson, who is 11. Samson is a full-blooded husky, and the mother, Lakota, is a full-blooded German Shepherd. And they just happened to get together about 7 years ago. Faith is 7, and I ended up with 9 beautiful puppies. And I'm not one to have any puppies because I wanted to keep them all. I ended up keeping 3 of them. At some point, I can send you a picture of the 5 I have. But anyway, it's about 8 months ago. One day, woke up and Faith, she's of course female, and she's a pretty big girl. She weighs about 100 pounds, and her brothers, Brody and Chance, they don't mess with her. You know, it's one thing about a female, you don't want to tangle with the female. All 3 of those males, the father and the other 2 boys, they won't mess with the mother or Faith because they'll rip them up. But anyway, one morning, Faith kind of like tripped outside and kind of howled on her back leg a little bit walking. And I'm thinking, man, I hope her hip's not going out. What happened really fast. By the end of the day, she was sitting on the ground. She couldn't walk very well. I brought her up to my ranch in California, about an hour and a half away is where I was living most of the time. And by then it was done. She was dragging her rear end around in pain, screaming. The next morning I took her to the vet, a couple of local vets. They did x-rays and couldn't find anything wrong. They took blood work and said there wasn't really anything wrong. Her blood looked good, but she was going bad fast. The next day, it was on Saturday, of course. She was getting worse. Sunday, she had started pooping and peeing blood. She was going down. She was going to die, I could tell. And Monday morning, I decided the vets around here couldn't help me. I loaded her up. By then, she had blood coming out of her mouth and her nose, and couldn't walk at all. She was in excruciating pain. I picked her up, threw her in the back of my old Suburban, drove 85 miles an hour, 2.5 hours away to UC Davis Vet Medical Hospital, the biggest vet hospital on the planet. Number 1, ran in there unannounced, emergency. I got a dog, and she's in bad shape. They brought her in real quick. They looked at me and they said, "We don't think your dog's gonna make it through the night, but sign these papers. We'll do what we can." Anyway, long story short, they just started giving her antibiotics like crazy. They knew it was some type of an infection, they thought. And so they didn't do any blood work at that time to find out what was wrong with her. They didn't have time. They were trying to save her life. They ended up getting her stable, and she lasted through the week. I would go up she stayed there a month, and I would go up every weekend, and I'd run up and see her 2.5 hours away, 2.5 hours back. She was improving, and about the second weekend, they went ahead and they located an MRI. The doctors here in my area didn't have MRI machines, so they noticed something in her spine. Long story short, she had some type of a bacterial infection that got in her spine, and it caused her to lose her mobility in her lower extremities. She couldn't control her bladder, her going to the bathroom, anything, and so they went in and they cleaned it up, but they took a biopsy, but at that time the antibiotics were working. They never did figure out what it was. I Googled it. There's some old long name that looked like what it was. It was like about 20 letters long. That's what they thought it might have been. They continued to work on Faith. She got better. She started gaining a little bit of weight back. She quit bleeding. And after a month, $40,000 later, I picked my dog up and brought her home. They said she'd never walk again. I was okay with that at the time. She went ahead and I brought her in the house, and she was moving around. She'd already learned real quick to just slide around on her rear end. We started calling her Walrus because she slid around like a walrus, and she was tenacious. She could move fast. And a month went by, and she was doing pretty good, and I just assumed she'd always be paralyzed. I was changing her pee pad and her diapers every day because she couldn't control anything. And so I brought her home. The first day I brought her home, that evening, I went ahead and I put a patch on her for the first time. I put it on her back, and I'm down there in the middle of her spine. And the next morning, I got up and I was cleaning her up like I would do. And her little toe moved, just barely moved. I saw it. I caught it, just barely moved. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what? And so I ended up putting some X49 on her later, and even some carnosine, and just patching her, taking care of her, rubbing her legs, using heat and cold on her, just taking care of her, feeding her a good diet, and some other things that I might have been using. But she just started getting a little bit better. After a couple of weeks, her tail would move a little bit on the end, and then when I would wipe her little bottom, it would really move. I guess she liked it. I don't know, but I was encouraged, and she was still flying around like a walrus. A month had gone by, 6 weeks had gone by, and I had her out on the patio on the porch, and she stayed in the family room there. It was quick, easy for her to slide her butt in there. And anyway, I just happened to have my camera on, my video, and I was taking a video of her, and she was going back into the house, sliding herself in, and lo and behold, it's kind of emotional to even talk about, on Christmas Eve, Faith took her first steps and walked through the door, ran about 10 feet and fell down, and I knew that there was hope, and I just continued with X39. Faith got better and better and better, and started going outside and running down to the garden and running all over. And sometimes, and she goes into the canyon trying to chase deer and stuff. She's perfect, except she kind of limps a little bit, and sometimes her little bottom gets ahead of her if she's running too fast. But I'm 70, and sometimes my little bottom gets ahead of me. But bless her little heart. She's everything and more that I'd ever dreamed she could be, and she's doing well today. And she walks and she runs, and she's a happy little girl.
Wow, Ron, no matter how many times I hear it, it's just a miracle.
It's just mind-boggling. When I've been in this company 6 years, and I've heard thousands of testimonies. When I think I've heard the ultimate testimony, then another one comes along that, like, really? I told David Schmidt in the very beginning, I came in 6 months after X39 got launched, and I told him, I said, David, I think we're going to all be guinea pigs. He goes, what do you mean, Ron? I said, nobody's used this patch that you've developed here. It's an all-inclusive patch. There's a little bit of everything, pain, sleep, energy, but there's one thing that none of the other patches do. It activates your dormant stem cells. He goes, you're right in some sense, but I've been using it a little bit longer. I said, I figured you would, but I said, so what we find out is that as we start to use it, I'm telling you, 6 years later, I'm still seeing improvements in myself, pictures that I'm holding up from 10 years ago. I look younger today than I did then. So don't ever give up using the patches. Don't ever give up sharing the patches. Don't ever give up patching your animals. And just, carry on, man. Together we'll succeed. There's 9 billion people on the planet, and millions and millions and billions of animals. And we got a job to do, right?